Welcome back, viewers. We were talking about football and our activities regarding football and what is going on all over the world. What can we do actually to go up to that top level? So Mr. Yosof is here. We were talking about our internal arrangements and how we can improve it. But if we look at, let's talk about some international football. Like if we look at our countries and the supporters, we are very crazy about football, like even in Bangladesh or in Malaysia, a lot of Asian countries. And all of us here, we do follow the European football, like the leagues, particularly the Premier League in England, and then La Liga in Spain, Bundesliga in Germany.
For me, that's good and bad. That's good and bad. I'm sure in Bangladesh, very similar to Malaysia, football mad country. You've got people who are very knowledgeable and they can name you every single player from Liverpool, they can name you every single player from Malaysia, but you ask a Bangladesh person to name 5 members of the Bangladesh football team, they'll struggle probably. I know in Malaysia they will. So again, you see, the football followers in our country, they will cheer on a top product. You give them something good and they will back it, you know? Like your Liverpools, your Manchester Uniteds. They're all clubs run at the highest potential, the best they can be. Yeah, it's just tweaking then. It's just buying a £10 million player here, a £20 million player there. It'd be so great if you could do that. But again, it all stems from getting your domestic football right, getting your grassroots programs right. You know, you're bringing through the young players to play at the right time. For example, in Malaysia, although the Malaysian league is thriving, our club sides tend to pick foreign strikers. So for our Malaysian national team, there's a dearth of number 9s and number 10s. Most of them...
I think very similar cases here.
Exactly, because these are the guys who will guarantee club sides goals. You know, you get a big Nigerian, he'll get you 15 goals a season, whereas you can't say the same for a local guy.
So how come, at least in Africa, African countries are developing their resources? Do they have that kind of organization, or do they have that kind of backup? Like we always say that we have to develop this and that, but if we look at Africa,
that is, I think that's a very valid point you brought up there. For me, Africans are unique athletes. That's what stands them apart. You can take an African guy, he can run 100 meters in 10 seconds. He can bowl you the fastest ball. He can kick. They're trainable. They're top specimens of athletes, which is not something Bangladesh and Malaysia possess, right? You know, we work at it, yeah? We do weights, we go to the gym. We have to work at it. I think what African countries have differ from us is the fact that they're better athletes. Naturally, they're better athletes. I would say their organization isn't as good, perhaps, in setting up their domestic leagues, but you often see they go abroad to play. So they're all being taught at the highest level. Simple.
So that is a question, like, you know, physical ability is something that is very important in football. And in most of the cases for South Asian country or some of the Asian countries, this is the case. And developing that is not something very easy to go about. Like, you cannot just say that, okay, we will try hard and we'll achieve that, because that's something sometimes it's not in your control.
No, absolutely, it's not in our control. But having said that, I mean, when I say physical, that's an example I use for the Africans. If you look at the Japanese, for example, they're not much more bigger than us. In fact, Maradona, how tall was he? Lionel Messi. These are tiny players with low center of gravity. How countries like Japan and South Korea are so far ahead of the rest of Asia is they have a blueprint in football and they stick to that. You know, they know this is how they want to play football. All the clubs adhere to this manifesto and they follow the style of football. Malaysia, we'd have a new system every 4 years. And there lies the problem.
We also want to talk about world football, like, you know, because obviously football is a very much international game, and we pretty much follow all the stars and all the teams, all the countries' football. So currently, obviously, there are a lot of teams who perform at the top level. It's not like one or two teams only.
No.
So and then there are always the same debate of European and Latin American football. But recently, because of the leagues, and a lot of players from Latin America or Africa are actually playing in European leagues.
Absolutely.
So there's a debate says that every country probably, which was before, like, you know, everyone has a different style, different way of playing football that is not there anymore.
No.
So what do you say about that?
That's what I mean by having a plan and sticking to it. For example, if you're not a tall side, your manifesto, your long-term view for your country would be to play the ball on the ground, to play the ball at speed. You have to play with what you've got. I mean, if you're a bunch of tall guys, then you'd bang the ball into the middle high and hope your number 9 gets ahead to it. But, you know, for example, again, I use Malaysia. We have a sport called sepak takraw. Do you know what that is? No. Okay, it's a rattan ball about this big, and it's a badminton court they play on. They kick this ball. They can only use your feet. So players are smashing balls at this high. You're doing overhead kicks. These are athletic moves that can be can be translated into football. And for me, if you can play that game, why can't you do well at that level? So it's there. It has to be nurtured. Everybody has to be on the same page. Clubs, football associations, everybody. Players.
And what about the international teams? Like, obviously, the Latin American teams, are they losing their charm because of the English leagues or Spanish leagues?
Well, you'll find Brazilian club football is actually small business. Many of the players only play to go to the more lucrative leagues, and that is money driven. The fact that they get 100 times more playing for AC Milan than they do with Corinthians. And so if you're a young Brazilian guy, you're promising, you're going to want to go abroad to better yourself. And the thing is, you'll probably get into your national side that way. You see what I mean? So I mean, you have to get to a certain level before we can even think about things like that. What you say about players playing in other countries, that's a very valid point. I mean, your most promising player in Bangladesh, your most promising player in Malaysia or Singapore or Thailand, their ambitions got to be to better themselves. And that's to move to a league that's better than your own. We may not be able to move to England due to stipulations. You have to be FIFA ranked 60 or something and above. But we can certainly play in the J League, in the K League, in the Australian League. These are leagues that are better than our domestic leagues.
How will that happen?
How will that happen? That's an individual player thing. I mean, again, I use Malaysia as an example because I know it best. Our top players tend to be very happy with their lot. And there lies a problem, right? You're complacent. You think you've made it. Well, whereas in reality, in football terms, it's nothing. You could be the top player in Bangladesh and the top player in Malaysia, but it means nothing in the world of football. Still a tiny dot. But if your top Bangladesh player like Hermonto starts playing in the J League and banging in goals, suddenly Japanese people are revering him. Think of the adulation he would get back home. You'll get kids going, I want to be like Hermonto. You know what I mean? And that's how you start it going. It needs an example. It needs someone to set the ball rolling. Someone who can put financial things aside for himself and look at the big picture. And that is hard to find, my friend.
Anything that the domestic structure or the governing people can do to help this, like, you know, contacting the league or promoting players or doing some PR activities? I don't know, like, you know, because most of the time, like, I don't know in Malaysia, but for Bangladeshi players, it might be difficult because of communication or their exposure.
Yep. But I mean, that comes with, when you professionalize a club, you maybe would get a foreign coach in. So you would learn different techniques, and then you import the odd player, you know, like a top defender who will impart his knowledge on how to close down players. And so that's what I mean. If you're domestic, because with domestic football, you're training every day, you're playing every week. With international football, it's once every 2-3 months, you know? So those guys already must know the basics. They must already be able to do A, B, C, D, E. And that you will only learn at club level. Again, you sort that out, everything else should follow.
We'll talk about more about world football after a short break. Viewers, stay with us. We'll be coming from a break.